Welcome to Read, Eat, Travel, Repeat, the book club and podcast with your hosts, Sara, Kit, and Maryanne. Three friends who talk about all things books, food, and travel. Welcome, readers, eaters, and travelers to Read, Eat, Travel, Repeat, the podcast and book club where books take us beyond the page. I'm Sara.
I'm Kit.
And I'm Maryanne. Today we'll be talking about Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. A spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't read the book yet. While we'll be giving initial thoughts and ideas, eventually we will be spoiling the end.
We will let you know when we get to that point, so feel free to listen up till then, pause, and then come back when you finish the book. Also, as always, we are adult readers who say adult things.
Nuh-uh.
Never. Any of my students who listen to our podcast will know that that is not true about me.
Lies.
Whoops. All right. So what's going on?
I'm back in
first, Kit?
Colorado, so that's
Okay.
nice. After traveling in New York for 7 days in the pouring rain. Back in Colorado, sunshine. We're
Back
just-
with showers and toilets and real beds and...
I mean, that part's not the important part.
Right.
The sunshine that really sells it for me
Yes.
here in Colorado.
Yeah.
But and being able to go to the mountains is always a good time. But
I
we're just
know.
coasting through the end of the year. We got another week or so, and then it's full on summer activities up in this place.
Fun.
Yeah. How about you, Mom?
So for me, I'm just super stoked. Last week was great. I think I've told you guys before, since I teach social studies, I run the Rho Kappa Social Studies Honor Society at my school. And we were asked to help design a museum exhibit at our local historical society. And we had the grand opening on Thursday. Everybody was really it was about the teachers who have come back to work at our school. It's called Graduation is Not Goodbye. It means they were alumni who went to school there and then came back to work.
I love that.
I love that too. That's so cool.
And we had 11 teachers, 11 active staff members who were honored. And then we included one who passed away after 40 years of working at the school and having graduated from it as well.
Wow.
And then we caught the attention of the morning news show. So Friday, we recorded with the local news show. So that was pretty cool. Although my little tiny 3 seconds of fame is nowhere to be found on the interwebs. But that was pretty cool.
It's awesome.
It was like we worked on this for so long, and just to see it actually come to fruition was so cool. And then today, this is like, I have a little free library in my front yard, and someone left an arc of Fourth Wing in it. And I am just like, oh my God. I could probably sell this on eBay, but I would never do that.
You do not sell art, Mary.
I'm insanely jealous. Like, who gets on that list? I want to be
I don't.
on the
I know.
list. I think
That's.
it's-
I want to know who in my zip code is getting
Yeah.
arcs of those,
Yeah.
and then we can be best friends. So
Yeah.
anyhow,
Shout
yeah,
out
that was pretty
whoever
cool.
lives near Maryanne.
Yes.
You should put a little note on the front of the little free library.
Like, thanks.
Yes. Thank you so much. Whoever dropped this book out, let's be friends.
I'm going to put it on. I have a separate Instagram for the little free library, so I'm going to put something on there, and maybe they'll identify
Like
themselves. So,
hey, thanks. Yeah.
what about
Yeah.
you, Sarah? What's
Well,
going on?
Like both of you, life is crazy with the end of the school year. However, unlike both of you, I still have 3 weeks left.
I don't miss that.
So, yeah, although tomorrow is Kara's last day of high school.
Wow.
So my mom
I mean,
heart is going to
yay,
be
but
a
no.
mess. We have a lot of fun stuff for seniors. And I'm student council advisor, so I'm in charge of a lot of it. We did a senior field day on Friday. We started last year because, like when you're in elementary school, everyone loves field day. 3-legged sack races, tug of war, the parachute. Oh my gosh. So we brought all that stuff back for the high schoolers to play with, and we grill for them, and we have yard games like cornhole and giant Jenga, and we have bounce houses and stuff like that. And they love it. And then we did a new tradition called Kinders and Caps. And it's kind of big with kids now, where like the seniors start at one end of the football field and the kindergartners, and they meet in the middle. And they give each other, like the seniors give the kindergartners a little horseshoe because we're the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
And it says class of 2037
Oh,
because
my
that's when
word.
they're going to graduate. I know.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's crazy.
And it's like I said, I'm on the field. Other parents are in the football stadium. I'm on the field because I'm student council advisor, one of them. There's 2 of us. And I'm like crying.
Of course.
It's really starting to hit. And then we had prom, and I also planned prom, and it was my daughter's last prom. And so I'm kind of a hot mess right now, like emotionally.
Yeah. Your girls looked awesome though. Their dresses
Oh, thanks.
were
Yeah.
beautiful.
They are so my youngest, poor Elena, did not have the greatest time, but I'm like, she knows. She goes, prom is not made for freshmen and sophomores. She didn't have any friends there. So it was just her sister, and her sister had a boyfriend. So she's kind of like, yeah. So it's been crazy. This week will slow down a little bit, especially with Kara being done. So a lot of the senior stuff is done. Although we have senior awards Wednesday, graduation is next week. So they do graduate early, but I'm not done till the 6th. And then I have to do a grad party, which I have not even started to plan for, besides some invites.
That's a start.
And no ER visits.
So
quick, knock on wood. We've been okay. I did forget one of the huge, super awesome things. So Kara's going to University of Detroit Mercy. We just call it Detroit Mercy here in Michigan for nursing. She wants to be a nurse, which I think is amazing. And she also loves to cheer. And she tried out for their cheer team last week and got on. So I have a college athlete, which is really cool. And she was so excited. And she got in just in time to be able to do an official signing at the school.
Well, that's fun.
Which is really cool. So she's signed it. Because Detroit Mercy, despite the fact that it's small and you literally can walk out of the cheer team, they're a D1 team. So she's like a D1 athlete.
That's awesome.
Well, I guess I don't understand sports, so I guess that's a good thing.
D1 means they can do March Madness if they ever make it. So her little cheer thing of like expectations, it was really funny. It felt kind of sad. It was like, should we ever make it to March Madness, the cheer team will travel. But they made it sound like, I know this never happens, but we want it to. And
but
it's going to be amazing.
It could happen. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what's going on. Good stuff.
I'm just going to throw in here, though, that I am freaking bored at work right now because my students are done. Okay. They took their AP exams. They took their end of course exam, and they don't have to take a regular exam since they had an end of course exam or an AP exam. So I have basically nothing to do from now until next Thursday. So amazing. It's boring, but at least I've been reading on my Kindle. So, but it's boring. So,
I have to be out of my classroom, like completely packed up and out, because I'm getting a new classroom next year. The problem is my new classroom is not built yet. The walls are up. And so I don't have anywhere to put my stuff, but my room's right next to the theater because I'm a theater teacher, and it's becoming our new dressing room. Because the old dressing room is getting destroyed for the band. It's a whole thing. So anytime I feel bored, I pack a box. In the middle of I'll be like done teaching, and I'm like, all right, you guys work on this. And I start pulling stuff off shelves. And my kids hate it because my room is usually full of posters and normal English teacher things. And it's all put away. And they're like,
but are
so freaky.
English teachers really normal?
No, we are not.
Okay, thank you.
It would take a math teacher all of 5 minutes to pack up their room.
Right, exactly.
It's going to take an English teacher like 5 weeks. And I've been teaching for 20 years, so there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
We had to pack up the whole library 3 years in a row because we were, the whole building was being renovated. So I got moved rooms, then I moved buildings, then I had to move back.
Oh, gosh.
We started just boxing stuff up like whenever I had time, but then we built furniture out of the boxes just to like keep it like
oh, that's fun.
Because it was so boring. So we like built a couch so you could like lay on the boxes of books. Then we had to like anything to keep the library interesting because you couldn't have any books in boxes.
That's fun.
I love it.
Straight.
All right, so let's talk about this book, Lessons in Chemistry, Bonnie Garmus.
Yes.
Who's going first?
I don't know.
I don't care. How do we want to approach this? Because I think everyone had feelings about
We did, yeah. I mean, I could go first because I think I probably had less feelings than you two.
Okay.
Well, let's go Sara.
I read it like
Maryanne. Because I feel like Maryanne has the most feelings.
Yes.
Okay.
I read this initially when it first came out. It was literally 2023, 2022 maybe. I read it and I thought it's a little slow because there's a lot that happens, but I liked it for the most part. I like there's almost too much though, like trying to tackle too many things and some things that were never addressed again, like the pencil. I love that she carries a pencil with her all the time. And I think it's super important.
It is, but there's a reason for it. We'll talk about it when we get to spoilers.
But I wish that there would have been other times where she pulls the pencil out of her hair and writes with it. Or, you know what I mean? Like
she didn't write
by the end of the novel, I forgot that she had the pencil in her hair. But I think that that's really, because even the cover, I have the original cover on my book. The pencil's in her hair because it's significant. So anyway, that's I remember enjoying it, and I did re-listen to it, and I did enjoy it again.
I had very mixed feelings on this book. I think similar to what you were just saying, there was a lot of things that as I was reading it, I was like, oh, it like interesting. Like this feels important and pertinent. And I think they were.
Mhm.
And they were never circled back around to or never connected to something else. And it felt like there was a lot of like surface level stuff that if they dug in deeper to could have been really interesting. Like I feel like we would have had a field day with this book on like the forums where
Right.
like everyone like individually we would be digging into things and
Yeah.
making like guesses and like why do we think this is important.
Yeah.
But when I was reading it kind of like in isolation, like I know we were going to talk about it, but as I was reading it by myself, I was like, I started to question everything. Like, is that important?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
am I reading too much into it?
Right.
Is this going to come back around? And I started not paying attention to the plot line as much because I was like, should I remember, like, is this coffee part important? Like, there was a lot of that. On the flip side, though, I really, really liked how just the general acknowledgement of the fact that being a homemaker and raising kids and running a household is important, difficult work.
Yes.
Because I think
Yes.
a lot of times we kind of like inherently know that, like as people who have children and try to run a home, like we know how much work, and not just the physical labor, but the emotional labor as well. Like we're well aware. And I don't think it's often said as clearly as it was in this book that like that's a job and it's hard and it's underappreciated, especially at that time. So I thought I really, really liked that. I just wished everything had been tied together just a little tighter.
Yeah.
For me. Maryanne.
My turn. Okay, so here's my deal. I thought it was an important story, an important topic, but I felt like it was told frivolously. That it was like they were caricatures, not characters. You know, that like the little girl being so precocious that she was reading Dickens at the age of 4. You know, the dog having thoughts. You know, I love my dog, but I don't want to think about him judging me. He's supposed to be the one person in my life who doesn't judge me. You know, so that was my biggest issue. I just thought that like, and I listened to at the end of the audiobook, there's an interview with Bonnie Garmus, and I loved her. Okay. Listening to her, listening to her talk about feminist issues and things like that. I loved her, but I just felt like she made this book kind of silly so that it's not a silly topic, but I thought she made it silly. And that was my problem with it.
I'm going to make the biggest leap of like connections at this moment. The way you are describing this book is exactly how I feel about the movie Forrest Gump.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That like you try to fit so much stuff in it that everything loses impact a little bit. Obviously, everyone loves Forrest Gump, but I always feel like too much. There's important issues happening here and we're not giving them the space they deserve.
I have watched Forrest Gump more times than I can count since I'm a social studies teacher. And I've always felt like I am missing the point. Okay, what is the point? Like, this is interesting, but I feel like there's a message that I have missed out on. So, yeah, I can definitely see how you could relate this to Forrest Gump. Definitely. So,
also,
anyhow.
I like the dog.
Yeah, I'll say the dog.
Right over there, but
that was my fault.
I thought it would bother me more knowing that, but when listening to it, it didn't bother me. But my animals have voices.
Have you ever had?
Do they?
That animals, Maryanne, maybe you too. But Sarah, but always have done it with our horses. Have you ever had the horse psychic come out?
No, but I kind of want to.
You have to. We used to
really
have it
want
to. She had horses in our area, so she would come to the farm.
Yeah.
And she would talk to all the horses. And at first I was very, very skeptical, but there was a period of time where I worked like early mornings. I was quite literally the only human in this barn.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that and I'm blanking on her name. I'm so sorry. If you are the psychic from Syracuse, New York, it's you. You're great. But she would say like that we had a big horse named Jimbo, who I was so mean. And she was talking to each of the horses and she gets to Jimbo and something he said, I literally was like, oh, there's no fucking way you would know that unless that horse just told you that. Right. And it was something about the way I went into his stall to feed him made him grumpy. Like that he wanted me to talk to him or, something so simple like you're annoyed with me when you come into my stall and you're nice to the other horses. And I was like, cause you bite me.
Cause you bite, yeah.
And then I stopped doing that and started like being like, Jimbo, what's up? And mood entirely changed. And
Totally
I was like,
changed.
Oh, it's real.
I have a former student / friend because I had her like on the equestrian team like 20 years ago when I coached. Yeah. So she's now very adult. She's had somebody come. She has a newer horse for her because she lost her, almost 30-year-old mare, whatever. And so she's had this, I don't know, it was kind of a psychic, but more like energy reading kind of thing.
Yeah,
at
like
the bar.
Reiki kind of
And
stuff.
so she's writing about it. And I'm like, I'm interested. I was like, what is it that you're having done? As she's writing this on Facebook. And in talking about it, she said, I feel like I can't hear my horse's voice anymore. And her old horse's name was Kelly. And she goes, I used to be able to hear Kelly talk and I can't hear Beckett talk. And I was like, wait, you never told me that before. Like she goes, yeah, sometimes I'm walking. I can hear like her voice in my head. Like she's trying to say something. And I was like, I am so intrigued.
I would say definitely try it. We've had them even after my one horse died.
Yeah.
That you can still get like messages through apparently.
Oh my gosh.
And the horses had not, my horse's name was Paint. His friend at a farm a solid decade prior was Max. Like that was his pasture.
Yeah.
Max had died earlier. And this lady would not have known that. Was like, Paint says to let you know that he's cool. He's just hanging with Max.
Oh my God.
I was like, okay.
I used to say my old horse's name was Jake, and he was an orphan, so he was a little bit in your face. And in Finding Nemo, when they're giving all their introductions, the little octopus, it's like, oh, you made me ink. There's the one he's like, I'm obnoxious. That was Jake's voice. Like walking, you have treats, and he'd be like, hi, I'm Jake. I want some treats. Yeah. So I guess, okay, going back to the book then, that didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. I also I get sucked in on watching these videos of the animals that use the buttons to talk. Have you seen that? And I'm kind of intrigued by that. So it made me think of that.
Well, too. But it's not even the voice of like the dog picking up the kid from school. I mean, a 4-year-old. That just was a little bit far-fetched for me.
Yeah. That's like, what were those children's books with Carl the Rottweiler?
Oh, yeah.
Good Dog Carl or whatever.
Yeah.
And he would like babysit the kids.
I remember that. Yes.
The baby. And
yes.
That would get me. But I think the precociousness of the daughter bothered me more than the dog. But
I mean, yeah, she could decode Dickens at the age of 4, maybe. But I mean, I could buy that, but not understand what she's reading.
I also thought like with a lot of the stuff that like sometimes it worked really well. I was like, yeah, I buy this. And other times I was like, this is unnecessarily. Like with the dog, I thought, I'm going to say this without spoiling anything. During the accident, I thought having the dog as a narrator there or as a voice there worked.
Right.
Because
nobody else was there.
Exactly. I was like, well, that makes sense to me that this is our reliable narrator because it's the only one we have.
Yeah, because the only thing that's there. Yep.
And then other times I was like, what is the dog's voice adding to this scene? And it's nothing. Like when everyone else is in the room and I can see what Elizabeth is doing and what the kid is doing.
Yeah.
Harriet is thinking. Like I can see everything else happening. I don't need the dog to chime in.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Did you have anything else, Ma? I don't remember.
Not for right now.
The historical errors.
Oh, there was a few historical errors. As I went back through the book the second time, it was funny as I was thinking about like the whole concept of like confirmation bias, like when I was listening to it the same time, like the second time was like going through like, trying to find fault with it.
Yeah.
And I actually felt kind of the opposite, that some of like the historical errors didn't bother me as much the second time through. I felt like some of the language sometimes was like very first century and not 1960s. Like I know they use the term mixology, for example, and I thought that was, but apparently that's been around.
Oh, really?
It's been around since the early 20th century, but it's not something I ever remember like hearing before the past 10 years or something like that. So there's just some little terms like that just kind of caught my attention. When it happens, it pulls me out of the story. And that's just a little irritant for me. Like the other thing, I know one thing was like with the reverse mortgage, that women in the 1960s could not get a mortgage, and reverse mortgages didn't exist until like the 1980s, where if you own your house free and clear, you can pull money out of them. So little things like that just drive me crazy sometimes.
I looked at the reverse mortgage. Their first one, I can't think when it took place.
It was like in New York. It was in like the 60s, but it wasn't in Southern California.
No, and it still was later. It was still later than what the book had.
Yeah, and it wasn't a common thing. And a woman couldn't get a mortgage on her own. And I was like, to me, if you're writing this whole book about feminism and women being treated as second-class citizens, then you got to do your research.
Right.
And that's what I was just really surprised when I found out that Bonnie Garmus is, in her late 60s. And I would have thought that, that would not have been something that she let slide by.
Well,
but
so AI, Google AI says the first reverse mortgage was reportedly issued in 1961 to Nellie Young, the widow of a football coach in Portland, Maine.
So that was not Southern California,
Not
but
Southern California. Yeah.
But
Interesting,
okay,
though.
but little
still,
thing,
yeah. I get what you're saying.
So anyhow, but like I said, never mind.
What I loved about this book, I love that it was about STEM things,
Yes.
women in STEM, because I think that's important right now. Women in STEM, that's not Allie Hazelton. I love Allie Hazelton, but
Hazelwood.
It's a lot of
Isn't it Hazelwood?
Yeah, is it Hazelwood? Yeah. It's a lot of spice, which I love.
It's
but
also straight up Star Wars fanfic.
Yes, it is. Straight up.
Like give Kylo
Love
Ren
hypothesis.
and Rey. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, yes, I'm in.
So I loved the seriousness of it being women in STEM and the importance of it.
But
I also loved the food and the chemistry thing. I could have read chapters about her talking about how food is just chemistry and how everything was perfect because she knew exactly what the chemical reactions were going to be. And I was like, these are why my cookies are flat.
But okay, so here's my issue with it.
Okay.
Why did she have to be so, I don't want to sound judgmental, unusual? Okay. Why couldn't she be
autism.
I do think she was on the spectrum 100%.
I read it 100%. I was like,
yeah.
I totally agree, but at the same time, I feel like that kind of stereotypes women in STEM.
Yes.
That
yes.
if you're going to be smart in science, you're not good at social interactions. And I just felt like that perpetuated a stereotype.
Yeah, that's true.
That she was just so off the wall that she took out her kitchen and put in a lab instead. I mean, that's not normal behavior.
No.
So, and I just would, I've just read so many historical fiction books that there's that talk about these same sort of issues, but the women are more, and I hate to use the word normal, but more typical.
Well, she missed a lot of social cues. I mean, even
absolutely.
Even with, the doctor talking to her, with Harriet talking to her at first, with who's the TV producer guy? What was his name?
Oh, Walter?
Walter.
No, Walter Pine.
Yeah, that's right,
absolutely. I totally agree that she was on the spectrum. I'm not trying to be judgmental about that. I just felt like it was like so far that I would have liked to have seen a woman in STEM who was not that like stereotype of, women in STEM are unable of being socially normal. So that was my issue with it.
Yeah, I could see that.
But anyhow, moving on. What's next?
So plot points, which we kind of dug into some of them.
Yeah. I mean, the single mother stuff also, I mean, that would have been rare in the 60s.
Yeah.
Unless it was a widow.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, I mean, divorce was practically unheard of. Like, you just didn't, it was so frowned upon.
So now that we have talked about kind of our initial reactions, let's dig into some of these plot points. And there's a lot of stuff to dig into. First on our list, we have the existence of Elizabeth as a single mother in this story.
Which honestly is one of the reasons we chose this book for this month, because Mother's Day, we wanted to do a book about mothers, and this one's kind of perfect. So,
and I thought as a mother, I thought she did a good job. I mean, as far as I loved her notes in the lunchbox and the fact that she packed those wonderful lunches for her daughter to where, Amanda was stealing her food because. Yeah. But I also wrote down that I love the one lunchbox note where she said, it's not your imagination. Most people are awful.
Yes.
And I think I'll make that into a t-shirt.
The notes were very real. Like, she's being very real with her kid instead of being like, oh, honey, everything is sunshine and rainbows. She's just kind of like, no, this is real life. And unfortunately, sometimes it sucks.
But going back to the whole idea of pushing too much into the story, like the fact that she and Calvin never married, I felt like that was just like one more way of saying F you to society. And maybe at some point it just got to be overkill. Like, does this woman ever do anything within societal norms? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
And I just felt that made it harder to believe or connect with, or, or just felt like it was just being kind of, I don't want to say shoved down our throat, but, kind of like, okay, she doesn't have a kitchen. She doesn't have a husband. She doesn't, So anyhow, again,
I want to say in the movie or the TV show too, the other thing that was super different is I don't think he proposes to her in the TV show. I think she finds the ring in his
okay.
office, which totally changes things. So it makes it like, oh, we were going to get married. I had this chance, but he never had a chance to ask me,
Right.
which is very different than what it is in the book.
Yeah, that's a different message.
And I'm not the type of person who believes that, no one should live together or, that it's not, I'm not coming from like some puritanical point of view. I just felt like it was just slapping layer upon layer upon layer of differentness on her that made her hard to relate to.
Yeah. And all the things that people in the 60s could possibly not like you for.
Yes.
And you literally have not one, but all of them.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. I felt like that just, took away from the story, which was an important story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think with this, and I'm going to say it like a bazillion times, I feel like in this podcast, is I think some of my issues with it would have been solved if we had gotten more information about any one, even if it was just like one thing. Like if you
Right.
had more information about this bit, other things might have started to like puzzle together for me.
Right.
I felt like, and I could be, because obviously we all come into books with like our own perspective and point of view and like where we are, in the world. But I read a lot of her decision making as someone who doesn't like to lose control. I want to make my own, like in Elizabeth's perspective, I want to make my own decisions. I don't want to have my choices dictated by the boss. I don't want them to only be seen as his wife.
Right.
I shouldn't, I'm picturing a small house and I want to have a science lab in my house. Why shouldn't it be my kitchen? I can make that choice for myself. And I felt like if we had been given more information about her family, I know we were given some, like, I wonder how much loss of control she felt as a kid, that now
Right.
she's an adult and can make decisions. She's grasping at everything she can.
Yeah, I mean, her family was fascinating because they were messed up. Her dad, my gosh, was so messed up.
So I kind of read her otherness as her choosing to not be defined by what everyone else wanted, almost in a very like stubborn manner. Like, oh, you want me to be Susie Homemaker and do a cooking show? Fine, I'm going to do it and talk about all the chemical components. Like, it was more of a like, I'll do this, but on my terms.
But see, I think that's the beauty of having like this discussion. And that's like what I was talking to you about wanting you guys to read Mad Honey, is because sometimes you need to process it with other people. So I can understand that and kind of can agree with you.
Right, right.
It's like, I just felt that there's a reason behind it. And sometimes you need someone else to bounce it off of so you can kind of dig into to find out that reason. I guess that's maybe like why we're teachers too, so we can.
Well, and this book is a great book club book for that reason, because there's so much to talk about, and every person that reads it is going to pull something different.
Right.
They're going to attach to the chemistry part. They're going to attach to the family. And then going with the family, the whole notion towards the end about found family.
Yes.
Right.
That she creates this family, that it's not about who you're married to or whatever. It's who you decide to be in your family is your family. And that's pretty cool too.
Now, somebody said that the chemistry and the food was a Kit said that it was your favorite part.
I loved that. Like, I was fascinated.
Speaking about being teachers, as I was reading that part, like obviously in the book, the idea kind of was that like, oh, all these, women at home are like, I'm doing science. Like, Dad, let me go. Like, and calling the studio and being like, what, when she said that, what did that mean? Like, is that salt? Like, what are we talking about right now?
What is potassium chloride again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I loved that. But as a teacher, it also made me think of all those times that we try and find that hook for our kids where we're like, all right, this is kind of a boring subject. How do I present it in a way where kids are going to be like, damn, miss, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like, I can just imagine like doing a cooking class, or like I sucked at science, so it wouldn't be me, but I can imagine some teacher out there doing like a science experiment, but like you're making fucking lasagna. And at the end, kids did all of this science and calculations and experiments, and you end up with delicious lasagna. Like, come on.
Yeah, I actually love that part of the book. I just feel like presenting cooking as not just some mindless job, but as actually being science. I thought that part was brilliant. Okay.
And it made all these women feel smart. That the women that were watching were going, wait, I do this all the time. And I'm actually using these elements and I'm paying
So I think
attention to
I
heat and yeah.
I love that part of it. And also I loved her sign off on the show every day when she
Yes.
said, children, set the table. Your mother needs a minute. And I was like, how often do women in the 1960s get a minute? How they were on all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
So I did love that part. See, I'm not a total hater, just
No,
a
I know.
partial hater.
It's just, this was a good book because it's a lot of discussion. It's a lot of things to think about.
I also thought that message of like, give your mother a minute is
Yeah.
probably one of the things that really hooked people today, because I think we still talk about like the mental, emotional, physical load of having a family and a house and a job,
Right.
like
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So even like now reading it and going like, Dad, yeah, just a minute. Give me a minute. Give your mom a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Gender roles. How did
I
we
was thinking of this because it takes place, because it was written a few years ago, but takes place in the 1960s. Do you think it would have felt different if she had been doing the same thing in today? I mean, the story could still take place, a woman in science.
Yeah.
But I wonder if Bonnie Garmus chose the 60s for a reason. I'm sure she did because it's more
Well, I think she did though too, because that's also like when the feminist mystique came out and talking about women and not being satisfied with being quote unquote just a housewife. So I think that was very intentional, and especially I'm pretty sure she alluded to it in the interview I was listening to, that's part of why she said it then, because that's when women started voicing their dissatisfaction with being quote unquote just a housewife.
I think I started to listen to it and then I forgot to finish it, and then it went back to Libby but I remember listening to that too, being like, this is super interesting, because that's when she did talk about the feminine mystique in that interview and all that.
I, like all things in this book, had mixed feelings. I thought that they did a really good job at kind of highlighting the gender roles. Like if you knew nothing about the 60s, I thought it was pretty clear, like this idea of it didn't matter how good she was at science, she was always going to be a step behind her male counterparts, even if she was more knowledgeable. Like I thought that was pretty clearly laid out, and you're like, all right, I see where she fits into this story, into this company, into this and that. I did have some issues with the idea that she never finished her formal education. And I thought,
she never had any formal education, did she?
No, but like she didn't even finish like she just was summarily kicked out and then, or quit, or however you want to put it. And then she was able to get a job. And that to me felt like a huge disconnect, that like, even if you're very good at your job, if at that time, I would imagine that if you wanted to get a job at like that, I'm blanking on the name of the company that she was working at, you would have had
Hastings.
Yes.
You would have had to really prove that not only are you knowledgeable, but you're worthy. Like you're worth them spending the money on. And one way to do that is to like hold up the diploma and be like, look at me. Like I did this thing. This piece of paper says I can do it.
Well, she had a master's, didn't she? She just couldn't get her PhD.
I think, she didn't have a high school degree, but then went to college and got a master's, which you could do back then.
You could. Yeah. It just felt like we spent a lot of time talking about how like she was always, steps behind, but like they gave her this job. Like that to me just felt like a bit of a disconnect. And then,
although they did treat her like a lab tech.
Yeah.
For me, it was more
harassment.
The woman in the audience who then became a heart surgeon.
Yes.
That was a little more like, but did she? That's a lot of school. Maybe the schooling wasn't as big back then, but I kind of feel like it would have been.
Anyone can have a scalpel.
My other issue with the gender roles is I firmly believe that men were pigs back then, that there was a lot of sexual harassment, that there was lots of ass grabbing, and, but I just don't know that it went to the point of sexual assault in a major company like that, where she used her pencil.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. Well, I'm not saying what she used it for, but I just didn't believe that there were that many men who were willing to go to that degree to dominate a woman. I don't know. I find that kind of hard to believe.
I 100% believe it. I think it was probably more common than we would like to acknowledge and admit. But also, this is where I go back to like the Forrest Gump thing, where like the same way like Forrest experiences all these kind of like one-off things that like there's no way one person experienced all
right.
To make her point, she was like, well, we need Elizabeth to experience these things. So then it becomes like she's getting hit with, even if it wasn't super prevalent, but it happened to like 5 people, she's going to be one of those people.
Right. Right.
And
So
even if it's not super prevalent for like a single woman to own a house and have a child and a job and this, that, the other, she's going to be one of those people. And that's where I started like, okay, like you're making a point, but also like, really? This one person gets all of these things?
right.
Like,
That's the thing is,
timeline?
do I
Yeah.
believe that
Yeah.
a man might threaten? Yeah, I just didn't believe that every man that she came across was going to get to the point that they got to.
I feel like I watched something recently too, and maybe I'm just picturing it in the show. The whole where he was like, where men, I'm going to teach you a lesson and starts taking their belt off. Like that seems a little bit far fetched to me. Like, I don't know. Like you said, it becomes this rape culture where let's just rape women then it's okay. Like,
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I guess so too. I always look back and think about, well, contraception was not particularly available back then. So it just seems like a man would be taking a huge chance if he did that to a woman in his own company because he might have, a child on the way before long. That's just what I just keep thinking about that.
yeah, that's very true. All right, now's our time. We are going to warn you that we're going to give away the ending of the book and we're going to spoil all the things. So if you have been listening and have not read this book and you want to keep going, then you might want to pause us, go read, and remember to come back. So spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I feel like we need a little sounding or something like that.
These are my elementary school buttons. When kids are getting too loud, I would hold them up to the microphone and just be like, yo.
My theater kids got me one, and I can't remember what it says now.
I have one that just yells no as well.
Yeah, it might be just the no.
Yeah, I have a no one too.
That's funny. So
no
yeah,
reason to get those out in the last
okay.
Well, spoiler alert. So let's talk about the twist, because this is one of those books that, okay, like I talk about with To Kill a Mockingbird, it goes in a circle. This book kind of does the same thing, where the end ties up with the beginning kind of thing. So
here comes the English teacher.
I know I literally just finished reading To Kill a Mockingbird to my students this morning too. So
like it's fresh.
And I nerd out about the ending. I'm like, you guys, he talks about the mockingbird again. Or she, I should say, Harper Lee.
That's another thing about Mad Honey. That's why I need you guys to read Mad Honey.
I'm adding that to my list. Like I got to read it like now.
Like right now.
Or we need to have it as a book club book.
Yeah.
I think it would be a good book club book.
That'd be a good one.
And Jodi Picoult is really, really active on TikTok. So
I know.
Maybe
she likes our stuff. She likes
one of my things. Yes.
Yeah. So we might be in with her.
Like, what's up?
Yeah.
Or at least her assistant liked it,
Hey, maybe she'll give us some swag to give away or something like that.
Years ago, when Caitlin was in high school, she and her best friends followed this band called Junior Doctor.
Oh, I love Junior Doctor.
And at one point, I was their social media person. So when all these little girls were like posting on their Facebook, I was the one responding. I'm like, okay, they think like Mark Hartman or one of the guys is responding. No, it was this old middle-aged lady. Yes.
Well, didn't Jerry do stuff with him too?
Oh, he did. Yeah, he used to drive.
Because I like a couple of their songs. Like I started listening to them a little because Jerry loved them so much.
Yes.
I was like,
I think that's why.
Yes. I forgot you guys knew me back in those days.
The Junior Doctor days.
But yeah, so that's what I always remember is that, things on the internet are not always as they seem. Yeah.
But that's okay. I hope that somebody is at least letting that person know. Speaking of that, side note, I commented on Maggie Stiefvater's post about she has the listeners going to print in the UK. And she posted the video of them like putting the book together, and it's so ASMR. I was dying, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so ASMR!" And she liked my comment, and I was like, "Maggie liked my comment. Maggie liked my comment. Fangirl."
Right.
So I'm telling myself it's not her assistant, that she follows her own stuff.
Okay.
She did it herself.
Yeah, she totally does.
I what was I thinking? Of course it was.
Of course it was. Yeah.
Okay, so where were we at? Spoilers. Okay, what are we starting with?
The twist.
The twist.
Must want to be the one to give it away. Well, I think it's important to talk. I mean, the first thing being that Hastings assumes that nobody will fund the lab if it's for a woman.
Right.
Which is probably true.
Probably true. And then surprise, the twist, the funder is a woman.
Right.
Like that alone is a twist.
Yeah.
Not even just who it is, but
I like the double layer of that twist.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like fairly.
What's her name? Her name was something that was kind of a non-binary kind of name. Like,
yeah. Well, and I think everyone was trying to like she was not necessarily being on the up and up with her identity because of the whole like the gender roles of the time.
She's dealing with the same things,
Right.
the whole,
And there was a lot of like, I thought it would have been, we thought it was obvious, or at least I thought it was obvious who the money was coming from. And then at the end, you're like, oh, wrong, like incorrect.
Avery Parker was her name.
Mm.
Which is a very like gender neutral Avery
Right.
boy, Avery girl. So
Right.
everyone at Hastings assumed, oh, our big funder
Yeah.
of this abiogenesis is Avery Parker, the Parker Foundation, and they ended up getting kind of slapped in the face in the end by it being.
Yeah.
But then it goes deeper, being that we find out that Avery actually was Calvin's mother that gave him up for adoption. That's the other thing we haven't even talked about too, going about Calvin, is the whole Catholic boys home.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And how like they do not give Catholics a good name.
No.
I'm just thinking about, and I think it's from another book I was reading recently, but like really his mother lost him twice because she lost him when she gave him up, and then she never got to know him as an adult either. So that kind of makes it doubly sad. She lost him twice.
Well, and the fact that he was taken from her.
Yes.
Like they told her, oh, you lost him. We lost the baby, but they took him and just like.
And I feel like I read about something like that in another book too recently. Maybe I'm thinking of this book, but I feel like I read it somewhere else where they would do that to young women.
Yeah.
They didn't even know. I feel like it was in another book I read recently, but I can't remember what it was.
But then because of that, she spends most of her life trying to like make up for it by I mean, she's obviously the one who was funding the boys' home with the science. Like, I want these boys to grow up with being athletic and also science. Yeah. And then the whole rowing thing, because his dad was a rower.
Right.
Who died before he was even born. So it's like, she constantly was she was right there, like right in the periphery of his life without him even realizing it. How much influence she really had. It's super sad that she never got to meet him.
Yeah. I do wonder, like, so Avery has obviously like achieved a fair bit of success. Like she has the money that she can, help fund this boys' home. She can fund the research. She's in a position where she can kind of like wield her power for good, like her privilege and her power there. But would she have been able to do that if they hadn't taken him away?
Yeah, that twist.
Like,
that kind of like, would it
like this?
Did it happen in spite of it, or did it happen because of it?
Right. And there's a bit of that like butterfly effect.
Yep.
Of like, if he wasn't taken away, where would she have ended up? Where would he have ended up? Elizabeth may never have met that. Like the whole story.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting, like, additional layer.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing I thought was super interesting is because of the whole Catholic priest boys school, then you have this other priest, Wakely, who's also I was intrigued by him as a character just because he was a priest, but he was also very science minded. Right. And so he was even talking about his own juxtaposition of how do you believe in faith, but also science, because you're not supposed to believe in things like the Big Bang Theory if you're believe that that you get all religion. But they started this pen pal thing between them, writing letters.
Yeah, they were weren't they roommates in college first?
Were they? Or they meet in college?
I thought they met in college. I thought they were roommates. And then Wakely, so isn't Wakely the one who said, "Oh, where I live has the best weather," and that's why Calvin ends up moving there.
To
and
Hastings.
Then yeah,
takes the job in Hastings when really he could have been paid a lot more going somewhere else.
Right.
But then, of course, he ends up meeting Mad, who is their daughter, and helps her.
Oh, that's right.
Find her family. And I just kind of love that it was like, and he didn't even know at the beginning, he was just being a priest and just, I'm helping this young girl, blah, blah, blah. And this girl who clearly has no faith. She's because she wasn't raised religious. And she's like, well, my dad's dead and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, wait a second, hold on. And then it all comes together.
It starts to piece together.
Just realizing how connected they are, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
He was an interesting character too. I really liked him.
I would have liked more.
Yes.
Of him. And obviously he was kind of like just a connecting character.
Yeah.
Like a little bit like to pull the strings all together.
Yep.
And to tie some people together in this plot line. But I was like, it's a whole different story. But like it was interesting to see Elizabeth kind of contending with the single mother, the gender roles, like working in science, all of those things. But then there's all these other social issues happening that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
And like religion and science and
And maybe she didn't want to get too deeply into that, because that definitely would have been an entire
I
book. Yeah.
I
Me
feel
too.
like
I was like,
I feel like I saw in like one of the Facebook groups I belong to, I'm pretty sure there were some people who were very angry about how the way the book treated religion.
Mhm.
If
I
you
could see
are,
that.
yeah, if you are a very originalist Bible
Mm-hmm.
believer, then I could see how this book would make you very angry at the way it talks about religion.
Yeah, I could too. And I mean, even Wakely admits, he's like, I'm not supposed to believe this. He's like, I do question it because I see the science, but I see the religion, and I'm supposed to kind of, that's why he was intriguing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, there's so much that I like about this book that I just felt like the way it was told negated it for me.
Yeah.
There's so many layers that could have been, I think, dealt with differently that I would have liked this book a lot more. But it makes me wonder too, like some of the people who are reading it, like, oh my God, I love that book. It was so amazing. I wonder if they're really seeing the full picture sometimes.
Well, I think it's any book you read. Sometimes you see one thing, and if you reread it, how many times do you catch something different? Or,
Right. Or
But like
too.
with the Hunger Games,
Yeah.
I know that it's supposed to be a commentary on the fact that our society's getting so violent that people are willing to like watch children kill children. But then there's those people who are going, wow, this is awesome. Look at these kids,
Yeah.
that they're not getting that deeper message, that they're just thinking it's cool that these kids are out there fighting to the death. I wonder how many people read this book and missed the deeper point of what I think Bonnie Garmus was trying to make.
Was trying to say, yeah, that's very true. I think too, like depending on I don't know what's going on with you in your life or what mood you're in.
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes you're going to pull something from a book that it's because maybe somebody who's reading it is a housewife and they're like, I'm struggling with this, and then they read this and they're like, wait a second, this is me. Like I am this person that feels overworked and underpaid as a housewife or something.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I mean, same thing. Like you said, you could reread a book at, 10 years later and come away with a whole, like Twilight, 10 years later and come away with a whole different feeling about it. But,
a whole different book.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because life experiences too, make a big difference of everything.
So we talk about the pencil.
Yeah.
The pencil.
Like I said, I loved that the pencil is on I don't know if it's on the new cover. I should look at that.
I don't know which cover
this
is. It doesn't.
You have the blue one, right? Yeah, see that one, it's her with the TV.
Yeah.
The red one, and then there's a blue one that has like the periodic table in the back.
I saw that one as well.
But the original with the pencil, and she carries this pencil in her hair, which I always did when I was in high school too.
Well, it's because she used it though too when she was assaulted.
Yeah.
Remember to stab the guy.
Yeah. In the groin.
And caused rupture of his intestine, wasn't it? Yeah. And then he ended up with sepsis.
Yeah.
That's what you get.
But that's where I said I wish, because she always kept that I don't know, I feel like even if she wrote with it, it would still be the reminder of her power.
Yes.
Like, if I'm going to write this recipe, let me take my pencil out of my hair and stick it back in. Or maybe a reminder for the reader that she does have
the power.
Some power. I mean, really,
that's
maybe all women have power if you just nail a guy in the balls. Like, that's maybe what she's trying to say.
You can.
I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not what I'm saying.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, that it could have been like a recurring theme throughout the book to show that her power.
Yeah.
And something
different ways to use power.
And something
as a weapon, but you can also use it for knowledge.
Yeah.
It can be wielded in different ways.
The metaphor of the pencil. That's very English teacher of you.
Right.
Sounds like something I would have my kids write 3 paragraphs about.
And that something as nondescript as a pencil could still have so much power. It doesn't have to be, this fancy sword or, a lightsaber. That something as simple as a pencil can still wield power.
Yeah. What does she do, though, the second time with the guy at Hastings?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either, because that's the other thing. She doesn't go after him with a pencil.
Yeah.
She says something. Maybe she uses her words, threatens him somehow, and maybe it's with it. I'm trying to think if it's with when Avery comes in later, and she's able to just use her words to kind of which also is, I mean, again, important. Somebody going from having to use a weapon and then be able to use their words to diffuse a situation is pretty powerful too.
Let's get to one of our favorite topics. That's why we're read, eat, travel, repeat. Let's talk about the food that's mentioned in this book. What about you? What do you got, Sara or Kit?
Well, I said I think that Bonnie Garmus missed the boat a little bit and she maybe having some recipes, because some of the food she was describing sound like I want a recipe for those brownies.
Well, what I would love though is if she did include the recipes and had it all in like chemical compounds rather than in like milliliters and all that, not like Good Housekeeping, one teaspoon.
The explanation of why you have to cook it at 425 degrees because this chemical reaction, that would have been fascinating.
That would be amazing. Actually, we should write to her and tell her to come out with a cookbook. Like
Lessons in Chemistry cookbook.
Elizabeth Zott's, Lessons in Chemistry cookbook. I think that could be amazing.
So I was Googling that after I read the book because I was like, surely the recipes are out there. And I was excited / disappointed when I discovered the TV show does have a recipe page. Like you could go to the TV show and go to the recipes.
Oh, yeah.
And it gives you the recipes to some of the food. And I was like, yes, but it's not written in like scientific formula. So then I was like immediately disappointed.
Have some lasagna and you're like, I have a lasagna recipe. I don't need it.
But I don't. Like I'm a horrific cook. I'm horrible. I'm a horrific cook. So even if it was done in like a nice formula, like a science formula, I never would have been able to conquer it. Like that would have been too much for me to handle. I once blew up an entire cake in my kitchen. Like, everywhere.
That's science. That's chemistry.
It is
that
science.
Is. You messed something up in the formula to blow your cake up.
I put the glass pan. Let me set the scene. My child is a baby. I'm making funfetti cake because I'm an adult and I can. And I used a glass pan, like a glass dish. And we had also been cooking on the stovetop. And in my infinite wisdom, I took the hot glass cake dish, set it on top of the hot burner on the stove, took 2 steps away and exploded my kitchen.
But that is a reaction. That is a heat
I didn't mess up the formula so much as I lit it on fire. But glass and funfetti everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
With a baby in the house, that had to be fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
She wasn't in the kitchen at the time, so it was all right.
Good.
I really wanted recipes. Like I was like, yes, I will make this lasagna.
Well, when she threw the one recipe away and was like, we're having brownies for dinner. Yes. And then she goes home and Mad says to Harriet, she's like, having brownies again for dinner, or Harriet.
That's right.
And then it's like, what? This is the 3rd day in a row. And I'm like, I want these brownies because they're clearly her like happy brownies.
Would that then trivialize the idea of Elizabeth as a scientist if we included recipes in the back of the book?
Yeah.
Does that make it just
it
like...
Definitely if you did a regular recipe.
Yeah.
It would.
I think it would have been fun to have it as like a science recipe.
1 or 2, just to kind of show that it can happen.
Brownies.
Yeah.
Give me the brownies.
Yeah. I thought, I mean, some of her, when they had the soup sponsor.
Oh, yeah.
She like threw the soup. I mean, things just like, I only cook using whole ingredients and things like that. And that part of me was like, I want to know how to do this because I'm.
So here's my question as someone who quite literally sucks at cooking. Her show is roughly an hour long.
Yes.
She only cooks from scratch. And she goes from starting the recipe to having a dish to serve in an hour. I don't think so.
I'm hoping that it's like the cooking shows now where they she has one she's already made and it's cooking the whole time.
I would assume that.
And then people at home are cooking along with her.
Right.
Well, maybe
isn't that what they said they were doing? They're cooking
some people
along with, and then you go set the table. Your mother's coming in a minute or whatever it is. And I was like, can you really cook some, I feel like lasagna takes longer than an hour, but maybe that's just me.
It cooks for an hour. Lasagna cooks for an hour.
Yeah.
Takes at least 15 minutes to put it together, and that's using store-bought noodles and sauce.
Maybe I just suck at cooking and take longer than everyone else.
No, I assumed because there was one time where she mentions she had put one in the oven and then she gives the finished one, in the next sentence, she's like, but I grabbed the finished one and gave it to an audience member. And I was like, okay, it's got to be the cooking show double that they always do.
Figure out how you cook all this food so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you magic?
I will say there wasn't the kind of food where it was so unusual either. Like we've had in other books where you're like,
Right.
Like the steak in Perfect Marriage and all that. Like this was just food, like every day feeding your family. Like I said, only the brownies stood out to me only because they had them 3 nights in a row and they clearly made her happy. So I want to know how delicious they were.
Waffles.
But, right.
Waffle dinner.
I have not been cooking lately. By the end of the school year, I hardly cook anything because I'm so tired that I'm like, nope. And everything takes forever. Nobody's home.
That's what Jerry will tell you, that now that the children have moved out of the house, that I don't cook anymore, which is not completely untrue. Because I never know when he's going to be home. And if he's still home, he's listening to me right now. I never know when he's going to be home. I don't know what he wants to eat. And so, yeah, I don't cook. But when we're done with this, I'm going to make some tomato soup. Yes, out of a can for myself with oat milk.
And is the best.
I know, right? It's comfort food.
I was thinking though, even like when my kids are out of the house and it's just Paul and I, that I may do one of those meal things like the Hello Fresh or whatever, because those it's for food for two. Like just
we did
throw it
HelloFresh
in
for a really long time because we were doing too much like takeout and fast food. And I was like, and I'm not a good cook. So I literally need like step-by-step directions with like, here is the exact amount of mascarpone cheese that you need or whatever it is. Like I cannot mess it up. They're really
well, and it gives you the ingredients. So you're not like, oh, now I have this huge thing that that
I'm never going to use again. We did it for a couple of years. I actually love it, but then I quit my job, so we couldn't afford it anymore.
Well, don't they give you those recipe cards that you could still use?
Yeah, but then you have to go to the grocery store and buy those exact ingredients, and that's not my forte, apparently. I do have an entire stack, though. There's like this many.
That's what Walmart delivery is for.
Some of it, though, like I like cooking. I like cooking real things, but it's very time consuming. Like you'll need like fresh ginger.
Yes.
You need a tablespoon of it. You buy a root that's 8 inches long. And I'm like, what am I going to do with the rest of this ginger?
No, HelloFresh's meals, I don't think ever HelloFresh can sponsor us if they would like.
Yes. That would be great.
Oh my God.
HelloFresh. Because I would try it too. Any meal. You can fight over us, meal deliveries.
HelloFresh. You can sponsor us and we will make a meal for every single podcast recording and we will eat it and review it.
That would be amazing. I would 100% do that.
Delicious. But also their food generally, like, again, we did it for a while, doesn't take more than like 30 to 40 minutes to make. Like they're not huge, long, time consuming meals, which was nice for us because we're literally always busy.
Right.
Shout out HelloFresh. Also on the Lessons in Chemistry recipe page, they do have the brownie recipe.
Ooh, I'm going to look that up then.
You can do the link. It's the brownie batter base and you can add a peanut butter swirl should you so desire.
So
yeah, I'll be looking that up.
Okay.
Location. We talked about the place.
Not really a whole lot to talk about in the place, but yeah.
I know. I wish it was a spot that was like more well known. I know I got the Southern California vibe. The whole like, being in California or whatever is amazing. San Diego, I always thought, the best place to be a weatherman is San Diego because it's always 75 and sunny kind of thing.
Don't you have family in San Diego?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of love it.
I did want there to be more about the location and weather purely because chose to move there. Well, they didn't choose to move. He chose to move there specifically because he said it's the best weather for rowing. Like that was it felt like that was going to be an important plot point. And then it was just like, no, we live here now. Yeah. And I wanted there to be more about I forget the exact line or what was said, but basically he accepted a lower offer for
the lowest offer came from Hastings, but
he could have gone anywhere to be a scientist. He was like a rock star and he chose Hastings because he wanted to be able to row every morning and was told this is the best place of all these places. This is the best place to do it. And then he picked it. And then it was just kind of where we live. It wasn't, I wanted it to factor in more.
It's kind of weird because when I think of rowing, I think of the Northeast more than I think of Southern California. I think of Yale and Harvard, and I remember being in Philadelphia a couple of years ago and watching kids from Tulane or someplace there's this one street in Philadelphia with all these row houses for all these rowing teams. Yeah. If they talked more about the location, I think it would have set the scene a little bit better. So, because I always kind of pictured this as being in New England, not in Southern California.
Well, and I'm assuming too, they're talking, Wakely talks about the ocean because that's where he surfs, but you don't row in the ocean. You row on lakes and rivers. We have rowers by us. The lake I live on is long and narrow. And they used to do a collegiate, what do they call it? The crew matches?
Crew,
What are
yeah,
they called?
crew.
What am I blanking? The regatta. They used
Yeah.
to do a crew regatta, a collegiate crew regatta. Like we'd have Big Ten teams come. Colorado State came one year.
Yep.
Michigan State. Things like that. And they would row up and down because it's really long and they can get a good straight slot. So I'm kind of like, what rivers and lakes? Because most of the lakes in California, they're all like reservoirs.
So it makes me wonder almost too, because Bonnie Garmus, this was actually her debut novel. She was a copywriter, and then I think she became this is her only novel. So maybe it's one of those things, kind of like we talked about with Stephanie Meyer's picking forks, or Diana Gabaldon picking things in Scotland, that maybe was something she never pictured, that this was going to be this huge hit, and just said, hey, Southern California, weather's good, let's go rowing.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
and it is a fictional place. It's fictional, so
I just Googled it. Just Southern California rowing. A remarkable number of rowing teams.
Really?
Okay, so
well, they gotta be doing
I
or something.
I didn't dig super deep into it. I don't know where they're rowing, but a surprising number.
Okay, so then, well, I know like there's some big lakes like Lake Elsinore and Lake Havasaw. The Havasaw, I think, is that Arizona or California? I don't remember. So maybe they can still row in lakes.
Yeah, there is a ton. There is a ton in San Diego.
Okay, so
the University of San Diego has a women's rowing team. I just wonder where they row. They must be. Oh, I guess they do Mission Bay in San Diego. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Because Mission Bay, even though it's kind of part of the ocean, it still is like
calmer,
long. It's long, and the city wraps around it, so it's calm. Yeah,
it looks like some of the like channels, like this is like Sweetwater Channel, which I think of at University of Tampa. The rowing team lives right on like the Hillsborough River. Like,
really?
They have a house, and they literally just row up and down like this section of the Hillsborough River that goes in front of the college.
Oh, that's funny.
And it's not super big or super wide. They just
go
shoop, shoop, which I guess so long as you got that.
Yes, I've seen them on the Hillsborough River. You're right. I never just thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a pretty sweet house when I lived there. I don't know if it's still there, but I was like, all right, you guys get the cool.
You're like,
house.
wow.
You have to be up at the crack of dawn to go rowing, and no one wants that.
So Sarah, what were your final thoughts on this?
My final thoughts, I definitely, this is a book I would recommend to people. Probably, again, for various reasons, depending on what they're looking for. Like I said, I really liked that it's this women in STEM. I liked the kind of circle, how it ties back together, especially because I did feel like it's slower paced. And so you're kind of like, how's this all going to tie together? Overall, I liked it. I mean, I've now read it twice, and I liked it just as much the second time as I did the first time. So definitely recommend for me.
Yep.
All right.
I'd say
what about you, Kit?
Pretty much the same. I thought it was a pretty good book. There's definitely some things that I wanted more of or would have left out, like if given the opportunity. But I can definitely see why it hit on a bigger scale, why so many people were interested in it, why it ended up becoming a TV show. I do kind of want to watch the TV show and just see how it was adapted. I'm not sure I would have picked this one up if it wasn't like a book club pick, but I'm glad I read it, and I would definitely recommend it to other people.
I remember when it came out, it was a hot book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, that's why we read it for my in-person book club, was because it was like a big deal. So,
well, I still remain not a fan. I mean, I don't hate it, and I'm not trying to disrespect the author, but it just was not my jam. So I just felt that the story could have been told differently, and I would have liked it a lot more. So I would not recommend it. Although I have put it in my little free library because I found copies of it at my library's used book sale. I have passed it along, even though it's not something I particularly loved.
It's a reader for every book.
Yes, exactly.
Jam.
Well, like I said too, I mean, you never know which book is going to be the book that gets somebody into reading.
Exactly.
Whether we like it or not, that might be the one that they're like, wow, maybe some person's like, I didn't realize there was books out there about women in STEM or whatever.
Yes.
And then they're like, what else is there?
Right. So it's not like I'm saying it's a bad book. It's just a bad book for me.
It wasn't for you. Yeah.
Yes.
I know. I almost wish when you rate things on like Goodreads, I wish you could just do like a not for me.
Yeah.
I don't want to I would not give this book like 2 stars, but I'm saying in general, if you give a book 2 stars or whatever, it's because it's a not for me book, or I just didn't finish it because it wasn't for me. And I always feel bad
try to,
saying
put
that
in the review.
I do too.
I do the same thing.
I do. This book wasn't for me, but if you like
this,
this one might be for you.
Yeah,
exactly.
I totally agree. Because anybody who's got a book out there and is published, and we know, like Sara, you've written books. It's not something that's just an easy thing to do. So I respect that, even though it's not the book for me.
Well, I've told you the worst / best review I ever got on one of my books. I still look at it. I still pull it up on Goodreads sometimes and laugh because it's for A Sadness Within, which is my vampire romance. And the person gave it 1 star because don't really like vampires, don't really like romance. And I was like,
why'd you read it?
Read this book. And I'm like, I'm not even mad about it because anyone who pulled it up would look and say, oh, well, that's why I got a 1 star review. And I do that often on Goodreads. I look at the 1 and 2 star reviews because I want to know why.
Yes.
And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I think you missed the point, or clearly you were crabby when you opened this one because I didn't get that feeling at all. I'm always curious, like, why is this a 1 star? Just because of things like that.
Yeah. I got most of my followers on TikTok talking about Eddie Munson from Stranger Things.
Right.
And I love me some Eddie Munson. But there was a moment where I had to like get on TikTok and be like, hey, everyone. Just a reminder, not everything is for everyone, because we're like getting onto posts, not even just my posts, but like other people's posts. And they're like, how could you like that? Because, and then they would like criticize the genre. And I'm like, maybe it's just not for you.
Maybe it's not your genre.
I don't know why you're wasting so much time. Like, does this make you feel better?
The people who are like, I hate Eddie Munson, but also I hate Stranger Things.
Yeah,
okay, then don't watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And even just like last week, I posted something about the TV show 911, and it was about they're doing promo and they were queer baiting like it was their job. And I posted like just a clip of it, and I was like, if they do not go canon after this, then it's like whatever. And someone was like, disagree. And I was like, okay, but why are you here then? It feels like maybe you could have just scrolled. Like, you can disagree, but like, why? But it's similar with like book reviews. You're like, if it's not for you, then just like don't read it.
You get that on Facebook with like sports teams.
Yeah, right.
Like obviously Michigan State, we have a big rival or whatever, and it'll be like a Michigan State post, like blah blah blah, Spartans are great, and you'll get somebody to be like, Wolverines are better, and it's like, why are you even commenting?
Why are
on
you here?
You don't even like. I don't get it. I'm like, whatever.
Way too short to spend time and energy on the things you don't enjoy. Like,
just complaining.
Go to the posts about the stuff you do like.
Right.
Exactly.
Instead of reading the crappy stuff.
Make friends instead of
what you think is crappy. Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, oh
Although
my gosh.
sometimes it is a little fun to troll the other side. So, you know.
It is sometimes, yeah.
So, you know, my whole thing with Oswald is to troll my children that, he's much more important to me than they are, since he still lives at home and
Since
they do
he still
not.
lives at home, yep.
You know, that's why they get Oswald themed merchandise for Christmas every year. So they know who is first in my heart.
Number one.
You know, that's why there's Oswald flags hanging from the front of my house, so that they know who is nearest and dearest to my heart.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing every single one of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what will we have this month?
Oh, I should send you guys a copy of the calendar. We're halfway through the year.
We both had the exact same reaction. I don't know if you were looking at the screen, Maryanne, but
no.
Both of us
were like, ooh.
That's what they got for Christmas this year was Oswald calendars.
I love that.
So so maybe I'll have to send you guys one.
Maybe we can sell Oswald characters.
I know. He's our unofficial official mascot. So
he's on the website.
Yes.
He needs his
you need to make a flag on whatever month you are missing. That's our Read, Eat, Travel, Repeat logo with Oswald.
You do know he has his own like bookmarks.
I know.
Right? Yes.
That's the picture I have on the website.
Yep.
The three of us and then Oswald.
Oswald. It's all good. It's all good.
So as we get ready to wrap up tonight, we're going to go ahead and introduce our book for June. I happen to be reading it right now, and it is super adorable. And I think I heard today that it's going to be made into a movie. Is that right, Kit?
I heard that too. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to.
It hasn't even been out that long, so
I know. We are going to be reading Summer in the City by Alex Astor, and I am absolutely loving this book. I have about 30% of it to finish, and I'm planning to finish it tonight. So that will be the next book that we feature on our podcast. So also, we'll be looking at a summer reading preview bonus episode, so make sure you're paying attention and watch for that.
check out our other book club reads and our monthly wrap up where we share our recent reads.
And don't forget to follow our socials. We are 5 short of 1,000 on TikTok. So go over, woo, and subscribe to the podcast. And please leave us a review. We want to know what you think.
And let us know if there's a book that you would like us to read and talk about on the podcast. We love book recommendations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So until next time, keep reading.
Keep exploring.
Don't forget to text.
Which is what I wish I would have done before we started.
I know, right?
Before we started.